AITA for telling my kids the real reason their dad and I divorced after he spent years telling them I was the cheater when he's actually the one who had multiple affairs. I, 42F, just destroyed my carefully maintained peace with my ex-husband Richard, 44M, by finally telling our kids the truth about our divorce. I'm sitting here at midnight, typing this out while my teenager is in their room upset with me, questioning whether I did the right thing. But I'm also tired of being the villain in a story I didn't write. Let me give you the full context because this situation is 10 years in the making. Richard and I divorced 10 years ago when our oldest was 14 and our youngest was 8. The divorce was messy, contentious, and handled poorly by both of us. But here's what actually happened. Richard had multiple affairs during our 15-year marriage. I didn't. When we first separated, Richard told our kids that I'd cheated on him. He blamed me for the marriage ending. He called me selfish, said I'd chosen another man over my family and my husband. He painted himself as the victim of my infidelity. None of that was true. But I didn't correct him at the time because I wanted to be a good mother who didn't speak badly of the kids' father. I let them believe his lies because I thought it was better than getting into a custody battle. For 10 years, I watched my children hold onto resentment toward me for infidelity I never committed. For 10 years, I was the villain in their story. And for 10 years, I said nothing. That changed yesterday. My oldest, Tyler, 24M, came to visit me. He lives in the city now, so he doesn't visit often. We were sitting at my kitchen table catching up when he said something that broke my heart. Tyler mentioned realizing that his parents' divorce wasn't really about infidelity at all. It was about choices, mistakes, and failure to communicate. He admitted he'd spent years blaming me without ever asking for my side. At 24, he was finally showing empathy and understanding. The tears came before I could stop them. This was the first time in a decade that Tyler had shown any openness to my perspective. For so long, he'd been distant and cold. I told him everything needed to come out. Tyler listened without interrupting as I explained Richard's first affair with Jennifer, a co-worker Richard saw for 2 years while we were married. Tyler was barely 4 when that affair ended. I described finding evidence, confronting Richard, watching him admit everything in our couple's therapy sessions where we desperately tried to save the marriage. Then I told him about the second affair. 10 years into our marriage, when Tyler was about 9 and his sister Madison was 3, I discovered evidence of another affair. This time with a woman named Sarah, a client of Richard's consulting business. Richard admitted to it immediately. He claimed he was unhappy, that Sarah made him feel valued and appreciated, that I didn't understand him. I gave him an ultimatum: commit to individual therapy and real marriage repair work, or I was leaving. He went to therapy for 3 months before deciding it was making him feel judged and stopping. At that point, I knew the marriage was over. Richard wasn't willing to change. He wasn't willing to rebuild trust. He wasn't willing to stop seeking validation outside the marriage. But for the sake of the kids, I tried to hold on for another few years, hoping things might improve. Instead, there were more indiscretions, shorter flings that I confronted him about, but he always denied or minimized them until I had proof. Finally, after 5 years of this cycle, when Tyler was 14 and Madison was 8, I couldn't take it anymore. The constant betrayal had eroded everything, and I initiated the divorce. Tyler's shock was visible. He'd built his entire understanding of his family's dissolution on a false narrative. When I explained that his father had blamed me to avoid judgment, Tyler understood the manipulation immediately. As the full weight of it hit him, Tyler realized he'd spent the last decade resenting me for something I didn't do. He'd based major life decisions on this false belief. He'd kept me at a distance because he thought I was a bad person. Tyler left that evening and called his sister Madison immediately. Madison, now 18, demanded answers from me. When I told her the same truth, her anger was swift, not at me, but at the realization of what she'd been told her whole life. She'd spent 10 years angry at me, keeping me at distance, all based on her father's lies. But then she called her father. Madison confronted Richard about his affairs, about his lies, about spending 10 years making her resent her mother for something she didn't do. That conversation sent everything into chaos. Richard called me screaming. He said I'd had no right to tell the kids. He accused me of being vindictive and trying to turn them against him. He claimed what I did was unforgivable. I pointed out that Tyler had asked for the truth, and I'd given it to him. Madison had asked for details, and Tyler had provided them. That wasn't my doing. That was Richard's consequences finally catching up with him. His response was pure desperation. He threatened to take me to court for parental alienation. He sent a text claiming I'd destroyed everything. But our kids were adults. Tyler was 24, Madison 18. There wasn't a court in the world that could do anything about a mother telling her adult children the truth. Update 1. The next day, Tyler called this morning with something important to discuss. He'd spent hours last night thinking about his father's affairs, about the manipulation, about how Richard had treated me. Tyler realized that his relationship with his father was damaged because of Richard's lies, not because of anything I'd done. The affairs had damaged it. The deception had damaged it. Richard's refusal to take responsibility had damaged it. Madison reached out separately. She wasn't angry at me anymore. She was angry at Richard for lying to her for a decade, for making her resent her mother for something her mother never did. But she'd reached a point of clarity. She understood why I'd stayed silent, even if she wished I hadn't. Both kids decided they needed to confront their father directly. They needed to ask him for answers. They needed to figure out what kind of relationship they wanted with him going forward. Update 2. 3 days later. Tyler and Madison confronted Richard about his affairs and his lies. According to Tyler, it was brutal. Richard initially denied everything. When confronted with specific details, his defense shifted completely. He admitted the affairs happened but tried to minimize them, just moments of weakness, nothing serious, things that didn't mean anything. Tyler pushed back hard. An affair lasting 2 years with Jennifer wasn't a moment of weakness. That was a sustained, deliberate choice. That was years of betrayal. That was choosing another woman over his wife and his toddler son. Richard's response was defensive anger. He accused Tyler of being too young to understand adult relationships. He claimed the situation was more complicated than Tyler's mother had explained it. He tried to reframe his infidelities as symptoms of marital problems rather than causes. Madison wasn't having it. She'd done her own thinking about this. She pointed out that regardless of marital problems, her father had choices. He chose to handle his unhappiness by cheating rather than by communicating, seeking counseling, or being honest. He chose to blame her mother. He chose to lie to his children for a decade. Richard tried a different approach. He appealed to their emotions. He told them he loved them, that he never wanted to hurt them, that his affairs had nothing to do with them. He tried to separate his romantic infidelities from his role as a father, as if the two existed in different universes. Tyler didn't accept that argument. Love for your children doesn't erase the pain of betraying their mother and lying to them about why their family fell apart. You can't compartmentalize that way. Your choices ripple through your children's entire understanding of relationships, trust, and family. Madison asked the question that seemed to break Richard. If you lied to us about Mom, what else did you lie about? Richard didn't have an answer, because the truth was that once you start lying about major things, once you betray your spouse and cover it up by blaming them, everything becomes suspect. Every explanation becomes questionable. Every memory gets re-examined. The confrontation ended without resolution. Richard didn't apologize. He didn't take full responsibility. He just got angry and told them to leave his apartment. Update 3. 1 week later. The fallout has been significant. Tyler and Madison have distanced themselves from Richard. They're not returning his calls. They're not responding to his texts. They're processing the decade of lies and manipulation. Tyler came to see me yesterday. He apologized for the 10 years of coldness, for believing his father's narrative without question, for treating me like I was the problem when I was actually the one who tried to hold everything together. We talked for hours. We cried. We rebuilt something broken. Madison has been more complicated in her processing. She swings between anger at her father and guilt about distancing herself from him. She understands intellectually that Richard's actions warrant consequences, but emotionally, she still wants her father to be the good person she believed he was. I told her that wanting your father to be a good person and acknowledging that he made bad choices aren't mutually exclusive. People can be complex, capable of love and betrayal, kindness and cruelty at the same time. Richard loves his children, but he also hurt them. Both things can be true. Richard has tried reaching out to me multiple times, asking me to fix this with the kids. He wants me to tell them that I was exaggerating, that his affairs weren't as serious as I made them sound, that I was being vindictive and turning them against him. I refused. I told him that I told the truth, and the consequences of that truth are his responsibility to navigate. He accused me of being the reason his relationships with his children are damaged. He said I should have kept his affairs secret to protect his image with his kids. I told him that protecting his image was never my job. My job was to be honest when directly asked, which I did. His job was to be a faithful partner and an honest parent, which he failed to do. The conversation didn't go anywhere. Richard ended it by saying he was going to find a therapist to help him deal with the situation. Update 4. 3 weeks later. Things are slowly stabilizing, though the damage is still fresh. Tyler has been spending more time with me. We're rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of honesty and trust instead of manipulation and lies. It's not perfect. There are still moments where old resentment surfaces, but it's real and it's healing. Madison is taking more time to process. She's still in contact with her father, but the relationship has changed. She's cordial but not warm. She's polite but not engaged. She's setting boundaries in a way she never did before, making it clear that his actions have consequences. Asked her yesterday if she forgives me for not telling her the truth sooner. Madison said she did, but that she also understands why I didn't. She's realizing now that staying silent to protect someone isn't actually protection. It's just enabling them to continue harming people. Richard called me yesterday wanting to discuss the situation with the kids. He asked if I would be willing to attend family therapy with him and Tyler and Madison to help mediate. I declined. Family therapy implies that all parties share responsibility for the dysfunction, and that's not the case here. Richard chose to have affairs. Richard chose to lie about them. Richard chose to blame me. Those were his choices, and I'm not going to pretend I share responsibility for them just to make him feel better about his actions. Update 5. 2 months later. I'm writing this update with mixed emotions. Richard has apparently made some progress in his own therapy. He reached out to Tyler and Madison with an actual apology, not the half-hearted, "I'm sorry if you felt hurt" kind, but a real acknowledgement of his actions and their impact. He admitted that he had affairs. He admitted that he blamed me unfairly. He admitted that he lied to his children to protect his own image. He admitted that those choices were selfish and hurtful. Most importantly, he didn't try to minimize or justify his behavior. He didn't make excuses about marital problems or his own unhappiness. He just said it was wrong, he was sorry, and he understood if the kids needed time and space. Tyler responded positively to this. He's willing to rebuild some kind of relationship with his father, though it will be different than before. The trust is damaged, and rebuilding it will take time. Madison is more cautious. She appreciates the apology, but she's not ready to move forward yet. She told her father that she needs him to consistently demonstrate that he's changed, that he understands the severity of his actions, and that he's not going to repeat these patterns. I found myself in an unexpected position of defending Richard to my kids. Not his actions, those are indefensible, but his capacity for growth. People can change. They can acknowledge their mistakes. They can work on becoming better versions of themselves. That doesn't erase what they did, but it's worth recognizing when someone genuinely tries to do better. My relationship with Richard has shifted as well. We'll never be close again, but we're no longer angry. We're co-parenting adults who need to communicate occasionally about logistics and our children's well-being. That's enough. Update 6. 6 months later. A lot has changed in 6 months. Tyler and I have fully rebuilt our relationship. He calls me regularly. He visits often. He's apologized multiple times for the decade of coldness, and I've told him repeatedly that he was a child who believed what his father told him. He had no reason to doubt Richard. The blame for the alienation falls entirely on Richard for lying, not on Tyler for believing him. Madison has cautiously reopened communication with her father. They're working on rebuilding trust. It's slow and difficult, but it's happening. She's still angry about the lies, but she's also starting to see her father as a flawed human being rather than a villain. Richard has continued with therapy. He's been honest with me about working through his infidelity patterns. Apparently, he's been seeing a therapist who specializes in sexual addiction and compulsive infidelity. He's doing the work to understand why he repeatedly betrayed his wife and manipulated his children. I don't know if his changes are permanent. People relapse. People return to old patterns. But what I do know is that he's at least attempting to address his behavior instead of continuing to deny it and shift blame. As for me, I'm at peace. I told the truth when asked. I didn't go out of my way to damage Richard's relationship with our kids. I just answered questions honestly. If that truth damaged his relationships, that's the natural consequence of his actions, not a result of my vindictiveness. I'm no longer the villain in this story. I'm the person who tried to hold a broken family together, failed to do so, and then spent 10 years being blamed for it before finally setting the record straight. That's a role I can live with. Final update. 1 year later. It's been a year since I told Tyler the truth about his father's affairs. Tyler and I have built a solid, trusting relationship. He understands now why I made the choices I made. He's grateful that I finally told him the truth, even though it took 10 years. We talk about adult things now, relationships, career challenges, life struggles. It's a relationship between two adults rather than a parent trying to protect a child from adult complications. Madison has also come to a good place with her father. They're not close, that trust was damaged too much, but they're cordial and working on rebuilding. She's learned valuable lessons about character, accountability, and the importance of honesty in relationships. These are lessons that will serve her well in her own relationships as she grows older. Richard and I maintain a cordial co-parenting relationship. We attend our kids' events. We communicate about important matters. We're polite to each other. We're not friends, but we're no longer enemies. where two people who were married didn't work out and are now focused on being decent parents to our adult children. Richard has continued with therapy. Whether his changes are permanent remains to be seen, but I'm not responsible for monitoring his progress or ensuring he stays on track. That's his job. My job was to be a good mother, and I did that by eventually telling the truth. People have asked me if I regret not telling Tyler and Madison the truth sooner. Honestly, I'm conflicted. Part of me wishes I'd been honest from the beginning instead of trying to protect Richard's image. But part of me understands why I didn't. I was trying to protect my kids from the ugliness of adult failure, and that came from a place of love, even if it wasn't the right approach. What I know now is that protecting children from uncomfortable truths isn't always the same as protecting children. Sometimes, honesty is what children need, even if that honesty is complicated and painful. I told the truth. The chips fell where they fell, and somehow we're all moving forward.